Axel heard the remnants of spring rain dripping into the gutter next to his ear. He struggled to open his eyes and watched as the scarlet ribbons of life mixed with the dirty water and disappeared into the rusty iron grate. If he had the strength, he would have laughed at the irony. His life, both literally and figuratively, was rolling downhill. The coolness of the sidewalk on his cheek calmed him. He was ready. More than ready to meet the inevitable. Axel was just closing his eyes for the last time when he heard the shuffling of feet and excited voices. Suddenly, he felt people gathering around him. They began to push and pull at his clothes. God, he thought, won't you let me die in peace? The next moment, he realized they were lifting him up. He groaned in pain. In his mind, he screamed at them, "Can't you see I'm dying? Leave me alone." He felt a light breeze on his face as he was carried to the waiting car. Voices rang out again. "Hold on, sir. We're taking you to the hospital." And then the siren wailed. "God, please let this end," he prayed. He was cold, and what was lying on top of him felt like a piece of sandpaper. The sensation awakened his memory, and he was transported back to his last vacation. He could feel the sand beneath his feet as he lay on the beach watching his wife and daughter laugh and play in the Caribbean waves. He thought that if he tried hard enough, he could go back to that time, but something was preventing him from concentrating. What was that incessant squeaking? He struggled to open his eyes and blinked several times, blinded by the bright light, before realizing where he was. He was in a hospital room, which explained the excessive sterility and rustling sheets. Next to the bed sat a woman he had never seen before. Seeing that he had regained consciousness, she stood up and gently placed her hand on his forearm. She said that everything would be fine, as if it were meant to be. He had no idea who she was until she thanked him for saving her life. Memories began to come back to him. He had left the bar in a drunken state and saw two men brutally beating a woman. She was screaming and trying to break free. If there was one thing he hated, it was men who abused women. The fact that there were two of them only made the situation worse. He rushed to her aid and punched the first attacker in the jaw, knocking him to the pavement. But as soon as he turned toward the second, he felt a sharp blow to his side. The pain caused him to roll onto his back. They grabbed him, and he turned him toward the first attacker, who was already back on his feet. Axel saw the glint of a steel blade before it disappeared into his stomach. "Come on," he heard one of them shout. "Take his wallet and let's get out of here." They arrived just in time, saving him from loneliness and despair. Of course, that was before all hell broke loose and these young people came and saved his miserable existence. When he regained consciousness, he realized it was a woman. He looked up at her and saw tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to thank you. At first, they just wanted to take my purse. I gave it to them. But then they decided to take me with them. They tried to drag me into the car when you jumped on them. You saved my life," she repeated between sobs. She took a handkerchief and wiped her eyes. At that moment, a nurse entered the room. "Sir Galahad has regained consciousness," she announced with a smile. She turned to the other woman. "I'm sorry, Barb. The doctor will be here in a few minutes to examine him. It will take some time, and after that, the patient will need more rest. I think you'd better go home and get some rest. We'll take care of Mads Lionheart, and tomorrow he'll be in better company." Sorrow leaned over and kissed him gently on the forehead. "I'll be back tomorrow," she told him. The nurse picked up his medical chart from the foot of the bed. "Well, we can't keep calling you Sir Galahad, can we? I need your full name, address, and the details of your next of kin." "Is that really necessary?" he asked. "I'm afraid so," she replied. "Barbara said that the two men who hit you took your wallet. I tried to find your wife's number in your cell phone, but I'm afraid it was damaged during the fight. I can't even turn it on, and we need your information for your file and insurance." He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Axel Brolin, 358 Prospect Road, Arlington Hills. "No close relatives." "No one?" she asked, stepping back from the partially completed medical form. "No, no one," he replied. "I'm insured through my job at United. I don't know my number, but I'm sure they'll give it to you if you call the office." He gave the middle-aged nurse his employer's name and phone number. After writing down his personal information, she smiled and began measuring his vital signs and recording the results on the chart. "All right, Mr. Brolin, that's all we need for now. The doctor will be here shortly to examine you," she explained as she left the room. He sighed, closed his eyes, and rested his head on the pillow. Damn these do-gooders, he thought. Why won't they leave me alone? What now? What the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? He had just begun to imagine a life without his wife and daughter when the doctor entered the room. When can I get out of here? He asked angrily. The doctor stopped and looked at him in surprise. Is that any way to talk to a man who just saved your life, Mr. Brolin? Yes, thank you very much, he muttered. And for how long? A few days, the doctor replied curtly. Annoyed by the patient's behavior, he moved on to his question. Mr. Brolin, your file says you have no close relatives, but when you were brought in, you were wearing a wedding ring. It's in a bag in the closet. Would you like me to show it to you, or are you going to continue deceiving us? Axel thought before answering. It was obvious that he had angered the doctor, but even after everything that had happened, he understood that it wasn't the doctor's fault. The doctor was just trying to help, and it would be unfair to take out his anger on the man who had saved his life, whether he wanted to or not. He decided to apologize and confess everything. I'm sorry, doctor. You're right, I am married, but I don't want my soon-to-be ex-wife to know about it. You see, a few hours before I was shot, my wife told me she was leaving me for another man. On top of that, my 16-year-old daughter told me she was going to live with her mother because the man has a ranch with horses and she wants to live on the ranch. I don't know if you've ever dealt with anything like this, doctor, but it can literally destroy a person's will to live. As I lay there dying, do you know what I felt? Gratitude. I was grateful to the people who stabbed me. I thought they had saved me from a lonely, miserable life. And then you came and saved me, he said with a smile that made his stomach ache. Don't laugh, said the man in white, trying to lighten the mood a little. The stitches are still fresh. Axel just smiled. I'm very sorry you had to go through this, Mr. Brolin, but are you sure you don't want us to contact your wife? Who knows, she might change her mind, especially when she finds out what a hero you are. I don't feel like a hero, Doc. There was desperation in his voice. It was very disturbing. Are you thinking about suicide? The doctor asked in a concerned tone. No, I highly doubt I would have the courage to do that myself. That's why I'm so grateful to those guys. You know, you may not think you're a hero, but the woman you saved certainly does. The first night you were here, she refused to go home and slept in this chair all night. The first night? How long have I been here? You were brought in on Thursday evening at 8:40 p.m. You were on the operating table for 6 hours. The stab wound in your side barely grazed your kidney and didn't cause any serious damage, but the wound in your abdomen tore your colon and a piece of muscle tissue. It looks like the attacker moved the knife deliberately to cause as much damage as possible. The good news is that you won't need a bag. A bag? A bag for a colostomy. We managed to repair your colon. You'll be as good as new in no time, but I'm afraid you'll have to eat baby food for a while. Great. Then back to my question, how long have I been here? Oh, I'm sorry, the doctor smiled. It's Saturday, noon. Saturday? What happened to Friday? I guess that's one of life's mysteries, he smiled again. Actually, we didn't want you to move, so we kept you under sedation for a while. And that woman was here the whole time? Yes, the whole time. As far as I understand, she left just a short while ago. I think she's going to get some sleep and come back early tomorrow morning. Now, I need to check your stitches, he said, pulling back the sheet and unbuttoning Axel's hospital gown to expose the wounds. He made a note in Axel's chart and hung it back on the bedpost. Everything looks fine, Mr. Brolin. Just try not to move around too much. The nurse will bring you some jelly in a few minutes. He turned to leave, but then turned back to the patient. I'm very sorry you got into such trouble, Mr. Brolin. Please, if you have any thoughts of suicide, let me or one of the nurses know. Working at my clinic, you'll understand the meaning of life. Everything will be all right, Mr. Brolin. Just give it time. Axel couldn't help mocking the doctor's parting words. Julie Brolin had already packed one bag and was stuffing everything she could into a second, when she looked up and saw her daughter standing in the bedroom doorway. Mom, have you heard from Dad? I tried calling, but all I get is voicemail. Maybe I should stay here until he gets back. No, you're not staying here, Carrie. Your father is a grown man. He can take care of himself. I know it's hard for him, but it wasn't easy to tell him that. Do you think he'll ever talk to us again? Of course, sweetheart. Maybe not to me, but you're his daughter. He won't abandon you. He loves you. Even from 3 meters away, she could see the tears in her daughter's eyes. She walked over and hugged her only daughter. Everything will be fine, sweetheart. Right now, Your father just needs to be alone, but you know him. In time, he'll probably forgive us both. She tried to sound convincing, but she knew they had hurt him deeply. She was sure he hadn't expected this turn of events, and she almost regretted not hinting at her infidelity. Perhaps he wouldn't have taken it so hard. She wanted to comfort Carrie longer, but it was time to go. She prayed that Axel wouldn't show up before they left to avoid another argument. She kissed her daughter on the top of her head. Jim and Chandler will be here in an hour. Carrie returned to her room, wiped the tears from her face, and slowly continued getting ready, but she found it difficult to concentrate. She kept thinking about her father's expression when she told him she wanted to live on the ranch with her mother. He looked like he was dying right before her eyes. She picked up the phone and called again. No answer. She began to regret ever meeting Chandler Freeman. If she hadn't met him, she wouldn't have fallen in love with him, wouldn't have spent all her free time with him trying to get his attention. If she had never seen him, she would never have introduced his father to her mother. But when they both showed up at the school dance, the opportunity was too good to pass up. If they had become friends, she would have had more opportunities to be with Chandler, her beloved. If she had never seen him, she wouldn't have had to make up excuses for her mother's secret affair with Mr. Freeman, or hide her mother's infidelity and lie to her father. She was so caught up in her little unrequited romance that she didn't think about how it might affect her parents. She didn't think about her mother falling in love with Chandler's father and wanting a divorce. She tried calling her father again, but again got his voicemail. By the time Chandler and his father arrived, all their personal belongings had been packed into several boxes and 5 large suitcases. Jim Freeman parked his extended cab pickup truck in the driveway. Chandler wanted to jump out of the car, but his father stopped him. "Stay here until I make sure everything's okay," he said to his son. "Julie said her husband left a couple of days ago and she hasn't heard from him since. That worries me a little. As soon as I make sure everything's okay, you help me load the car." He approached the house cautiously. Carrie was still upstairs, but Julie heard them pull up and came out to greet him, hugging and kissing him. Stepping back, he asked almost in a whisper, "He's not back yet?" "No, I haven't heard from him yet. I'm starting to get a little worried myself." Carrie had tried calling him several times, but only got his answering machine. She left a few messages, but nothing changed. She glanced at the stairs to make sure her daughter couldn't hear. "I hope he hasn't done anything stupid. Carrie is thrilled with life on the ranch right now, but if anything happens to her father, she'll probably blame me." "Do you really think he's capable of that?" "I don't know. I've never seen him like this, Jim. It was enough that I told him I was filing for divorce, but when Carrie said she was leaving with me, his eyes just went blank." "Well, if you can't get through to him, there's nothing you can do. Let's hope he's found himself a girlfriend," he commented with a slight smile. "Yeah, I highly doubt that. Axel is a good man. I never worried that he would cheat on me." The last thing he wanted to hear was how good a person Axel was. Changing the subject, Jim poked his head out the door and called Chandler to help with the boxes. "We'd better start loading the truck. Are you sure you got everything? We don't know if we'll be able to come back here once we leave." "Yes, we do, but I'll run upstairs and remind Carrie." Julie ran upstairs and Chandler and his father went to the truck with the pile of boxes. When she entered her daughter's room, she was sitting at the table writing. "Honey, are you ready? Chandler is here. They're loading the truck." "I'm writing a letter to Dad," she replied, tears welling up in her eyes. She looked up at her mother. "Mom, are we doing the right thing? He looked so hurt," she said, and began to cry again. Her mother came over and hugged her. "Life can be hard, dear, but we have to do what's best for us, even if it hurts others sometimes. Everything will be fine, sweetheart, you'll see. Your father is a gift from fate. As soon as women find out he's free again, they'll be knocking on his door," she said with a slight smile. "Do you think so?" "Oh, my dear, there's no doubt about it. He'll be happily married again soon." "I really hope so, Mom. I keep thinking about how I lied when Dad came home from work and said you'd gone out with a friend, even though I knew you were with Mr. Freeman. I feel so guilty." "Don't blame yourself, dear. I asked you to do it. None of us knew then how it would end. If we had known, we might have done things differently, but, dear, you can't change anything now. We have our whole lives ahead of us, and we owe it to ourselves to be happy. Now go finish your letter, and let's go." "Okay, Mom, I'll be there in a couple of minutes. I'm almost done." When Axel woke up the next morning, he saw Barbara sitting obediently on a chair next to his bed. Seeing that he had opened his eyes, she smiled. But before she could say anything, Axel beat her to it. You know, you don't have to come to me all the time. You must have a life outside this hospital. Forget about me. Go to work or do something else. Forget about you? She exclaimed. You saved my life. How can I forget you? It's very simple. Walk out the door and don't look back. Listen, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but if you really want to thank me for saving your life, just leave me alone, please. She was surprised. Why? I don't understand. Your heroism is all over the internet. You're famous. 3 news channels have already called me to report on this. Everyone wants to interview you. That was the last thing he wanted. You didn't tell them where I was, did you? Well, yes, but I don't think the hospital will let them in without your permission. I'll take care of that right away, he said and reached for the call button. Nurse, he said to the woman in white who appeared in the doorway. I understand that journalists may come to see me, but don't let them in here. I don't want to see anyone. All right, Mr. Brolin, I'll pass it on. When the nurse left, he looked at Barbara again. How did they find you? Probably from the police report. Damn, he hissed. Now they probably have my name too. Axel rolled his eyes toward the ceiling. I just want to be left alone. Is that too much to ask? I'm so sorry, Axel. I didn't know. Oh, it's not your fault, Barbara. You're not to blame. Don't worry. Are you being sarcastic right now? No, honestly, I'm not. I just don't want to be anyone's hero. I just want to get out of here and go somewhere where I'll be left alone. That's all. Well, if you want me to leave you alone, I'll go. But you'll always be my hero, Axel. You saved my life, and a man doesn't forget that. She stood up with tears in her eyes, ready to leave. Axel regretted being so cruel to her. Listen, I'm really sorry. I've had a rough week. I really want you to stop wasting your time here. I know you have other things to do, but if you leave me your number, I can call you sometimes to see how you're doing. He saw her smile for the first time. I'd love to, she replied. Taking a pen and paper from the bedside table, she wrote her name and number. Please don't lose it, Axel. Leaning over, she kissed him gently on the lips and repeated, I'll never forget you, Axel. You saved my life. You're a real hero. And with those words, she turned and left the room. As much as he wanted to be alone, the loneliness he felt when she left was palpable. For the first time since his whole world had fallen apart, Axel was left alone with his thoughts. Tears welled up in his eyes as he thought about the loss of his wife and daughter. Everything would have been so much easier if they had just left him on the sidewalk. For Julie and Carrie, Sunday morning was the beginning of a new life. Julie had spent the night making love to her new man. When she was officially divorced and they could appear in public together, women from Wisconsin to Indiana would envy her. Carrie woke up dreaming of a future with Chandler. Now that she was literally living in the same house with him, she had no doubt that he would love her as much as she loved him. She couldn't wait to see the expressions on her friends' faces when they saw her on Monday morning as she rode to school with him. She didn't even think about her father, imagining all the questions they would ask her. She was still dreaming when she heard a knock on the door. Honey, are you awake? Yes, Mom. Get dressed and come down to breakfast. We still have to unpack and Jim wants to go horseback riding on the ranch. Okay, Mom, I'll be in a few minutes. Ranch. Why did everyone call it a ranch? It was 12 acres of land in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. They probably called it a ranch because of the horses, she thought. In fact, Jim Freeman had dreamed of being a cowboy since he was a child. When the opportunity arose to buy the house and all the land around it, he jumped at the chance. He built a stable, bought a couple of horses, and named the ranch J-Bar C Ranch. When he realized that riding horses wasn't as easy as it looked on TV, he hired an instructor for Chandler and himself. He even bought a couple of cowboy hats, although Chandler's hat never made it out of the closet. As soon as Julie started hinting that she wanted to divorce Axel and move in with him, Jim bought 2 more horses. Julie showed no interest in horseback riding. She was happy just to sit on the horse while it walked, but Chandler was an excellent rider, so Carrie naturally wanted to learn too. The first lesson was scheduled for the following Saturday. On Monday morning, Julie learned what it meant to be the wife of a TV presenter when the alarm clock rang at 5 o'clock. She just sighed irritably. When she opened her eyes, Jim was already sitting on the edge of the bed. Sorry, honey, but morning work pays better than the 10 o'clock news. Go back to sleep. I'll be back around 11:30. Julie smiled approvingly, rolled over onto her back, and went back to sleep. Chandler was used to getting ready for school on his own. He set his alarm 15 minutes early so he could shower before waking up his future stepsister. By the time she came out of the bathroom, Chandler had already made breakfast. Julie came downstairs to see them off, then sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and began to think about her new morning routine. Jim was in a great mood when he entered the studio. On his way to the dressing room, he greeted several employees, chose a light gray suit for the show, and went to the dressing room. He sat in his chair for about 10 minutes until director Todd Kozlinski approached him. "Hi, Jim. Several cameramen said you were in a good mood. Did you have a good weekend?" "Yeah, good. Busy, but very enjoyable. How about you?" "Same old, nothing new. Here's the script for the first news segment. We'll start with the story about the guy who was stabbed to death recently. Tim spent most of the weekend at the hospital, trying to get an interview with him, but nothing's come of it yet. Start with the first 3 lines, then dub the video. We have one shot of him being stabbed and a few others of him being put on a stretcher and taken away in an ambulance. Hopefully, by the time we get back to you, Tim will be ready to give a remote interview. And if not, we'll ask him to say a few words from the hospital." Jim listened, scanning the text, and suddenly almost jumped out of his chair. "Axel Brolin, he was stabbed!" he almost shouted, startling Todd and the makeup artist. "Yes, do you know him?" "Damn it, Todd, I can't do this. You'll have to find someone else." "What do you mean you can't? For God's sake, this is our main story. You have to do it." Damn, 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 damn. How the hell did they stab him? He didn't do it himself, did he? Are you kidding me? Where have you been hiding all weekend? In a cave? Damn, the video of him getting stabbed has almost 1 million views on YouTube, not to mention Facebook, Instagram, and a dozen other sites. How do you know this guy? Jim looked at the makeup artist. "Audrey, could you leave us alone for a couple of minutes?" She put down her makeup sponge, and although she didn't look happy about being asked to leave, she did so. Jim waited until she closed the door behind her. "I stole his wife and family." "What? What do you mean, stole?" It took him only a split second to realize what she meant. "Don't tell me you've been having an affair with a married woman. Damn, Jim, you've got to be kidding me. Of all the women in this town, you couldn't find one who wasn't married? That must be why you're in such a good mood." He snatched the script from Jim's hands. "Christ!" he shouted and ran out of the room. Audrey poked her head out the door. "Should I go on?" "I'd like to know," he replied. A couple of minutes later, he was called into the producer's office. "Go home, Jim. We'll say you're not feeling well. How about 10 minutes of commercials tonight?" "I don't know yet. Go home. We'll call you when we decide what to do." "You know it's going to get out, right? With the press we have in this town, someone's bound to find out. This Brolin guy is a national hero, and you know what all heroes have in common. They're not villains. Hopefully we can limit that nickname to the people who hit him. But I wouldn't want to be in your shoes if the public finds out about your role in this. Go home." Jim turned toward the door when the producer fired his last sentence at him. "And Jim, I really hope it was worth it." It was that last sentence that made Jim return to the dressing room. He looked at himself in the mirror and said loudly to the person staring back at him, "You're a stupid bastard. He's right, you should have known better." He had been in the business long enough to see careers destroyed for less than what he was facing. Damn, he thought to himself, it's too late to do anything now. The damage is done. All he could do was pray that none of his colleagues knew the whole story, but that was unlikely, especially considering that everyone was waiting for the interview with Brolin. He hoped it was just his imagination, but as he left the building, everyone seemed to be frowning at him. As he walked to his parking spot, his son pulled up to the school parking lot. Passing through the main doors, he told Carrie he would meet her after school. She was standing by her locker when her friend Jenny saw her and ran up to her. "Carrie, how's your dad?" Carrie looked at her friend in surprise, not understanding how she could know what had happened. "Oh, I don't know. I couldn't get through to him." "How? He's not in the hospital." "The hospital? What do you mean? Why? It was your father who was stabbed, wasn't it? He looked just like him." "Stabbed? Hey, Carrie," another friend called out. "How's your dad? Is he going to be okay?" Carrie stood with her mouth open. Jenny spoke again, taking out her cell phone. "Look, isn't that your dad?" she asked, showing Carrie the screen. "Oh my God," Carrie screamed. She bent down, frantically pulled her phone out of her backpack, and called her mom while her friends looked at her. "Mom, my dad's been stabbed." "What are you talking about?" "He's been stabbed. It's on YouTube. That's why he's not answering my calls." Okay, calm down. I'll call and find out what's going on. I want to go to him, Mom. I don't want to stay at school. I can't. I want to be with him. Okay, sweetie. Go to the office and tell them what happened. Tell them I'll pick you up, but I need to make a call first, so I'll be a little late. Okay, Mom. Just don't be late. I won't be late, sweetie. I'll stop by the office when I get there. Carrie cried as she left her friends and headed for the office. Meanwhile, Julie called Jim. He answered on his car's Bluetooth. Yes. Jim, it's me. Have you heard anything about Axel getting cut? Oh yes, of course, he's practically a national hero now. Why didn't you tell me? I just found out. What happened? Carrie just found out at school. She's hysterical. I'm on my way to pick her up. She wants to see him. Do you know which hospital he's at? No, but I can find out. I'll call you back in a few minutes. Jim hung up, then said into the receiver, Call Tim McDaniels. God, Jim, I just talked to Todd. No, I haven't met him yet. Tim, sorry to bother you, but I'm not calling about the interview. I just need to know which hospital he's in. He's at Northwest Hospital, but if you're thinking about a phone interview, good luck. Everyone's being very secretive about this guy. The nurses are acting strange, and I'm starting to wonder if he's alive. Jim's heart almost stopped. Damn, not this, he said aloud. Tim heard him on the phone. Why? Never mind. Thanks for the information, Tim, he said, and hung up. Damn, 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 he shouted, hitting the steering wheel of his new Corvette. He took a deep breath before calling Julie back. Hi, did you find out where he is? I was just about to pick up Carrie. Yes, he's at Northwest Hospital, but what? Well, I was talking to a reporter who's trying to get an interview with him, and he says everyone's acting strange. Tell Carrie to wait somewhere until you talk to someone. You think he might be dead? I don't know, honey, but Tim thinks it's possible. Oh, God, I hope he's not dead. Seeing the pain on his face would be the last memory Carrie has of her father. I pray she doesn't have to live with that for the rest of her life. Yeah, this is bad for all of us. I'm heading home. What? Why? What do you think? Your asshole husband is headline news. He's all over the morning shows. When I told the director I couldn't read, he made me explain why. TV news is a cruel industry. Someone will find out about my role in this whole thing, and in this business, becoming news is not desirable. If this gets out, I could lose my job. At that moment, Julie felt sympathy for her daughter. I can't worry about that right now. I'm worried about Carrie. I have to go, she said abruptly, hanging up the phone. Now, in addition to worrying about her daughter, she was angry at her fiancé for his selfish behavior and for caring more about his job than Carrie. It was almost 9:30 when she pulled into the school parking lot. Before going in, she took a handkerchief out of her purse and wiped her tears. Mom, Carrie called as soon as she entered the school office. It's okay. Everything will be fine, she said, hugging her daughter. Still hugging her daughter, Julie glanced back at the desk and noticed one of the secretaries looking at her. Go on, the girl said. She's already checked everything. We wish you all the best, she added. I'm sure he'll be fine. Julie thanked her and walked Carrie to the exit. When they entered the main entrance of the hospital, Julie told Carrie to sit down and wait for her while she spoke to the woman at the desk. Carrie didn't like it, but she obeyed her mother. Julie froze when she approached the hospital administrator. Excuse me, I'm Julie Brolin, Axel Brolin's wife. Could you tell me about his condition? She didn't like the worried look on her face. Mrs. Brolin, the doctor wants to talk to you. Do you see those small rooms at the end of the hall? She nodded in the direction of the rooms. Please take a seat in room number 2, and I'll let the doctor know you're waiting. Okay, but at least tell me if he's alive or dead. Mrs. Brolin, I understand your concern, but you need to talk to the doctor. Julie gave her a reproachful look and sighed. All right, listen. Our daughter is sitting in there. If she says she wants to be with me, tell her she's a minor or something like that. If her father is dead, I don't want her to hear it from some doctor. I understand, Mrs. Brolin. The doctor will still want to talk to you alone, she confirmed. Carrie jumped up as soon as she saw her mother coming toward her. Is he okay? The woman I was talking to doesn't know anything, dear. I need to go to that little room. Your father's doctor will let me know how he's doing. I'm sorry, you're too young to be there with me, but I'll be back as soon as I've talked to the doctor. Carrie didn't like that, but she went back and sat down, keeping her eyes on her mother. Julie didn't have to wait long. A middle-aged man with graying temples and a white coat entered and closed the door behind him. Julie didn't wait for him to sit down. "How is he, doctor?" She saw him frown and immediately thought the worst. "I was hoping you would tell me that," he replied. Julie frowned. "What are you talking about? How should I know? You're his doctor, aren't you?" "He escaped from here last night." "Don't ask me how, because I don't know any more than you do. We were going to discharge him today anyway, but we have some medication we were going to give him for the pain and to help him use the toilet." "How could you let him go?" "This is a hospital, Mrs. Brolin, not a prison. He was unconscious, and we took him off life support. Somehow, he got past the lock on his cabinet, got dressed, and slipped past the nurses. I hoped he went home. My daughter and I weren't home for several days. We were out of town. My daughter tried to call him several times, but he didn't answer, and I came here when I found out what had happened. He didn't answer his cell phone because it was broken during the attack." "Oh, I see. I'll explain that to my daughter. She thinks he just doesn't want to talk to her. You said he's out of critical condition, so he'll be okay, right?" "Well, not exactly. He has stitches on the outside and inside. Too much movement could cause the stitches to tear, especially if he tries to lift anything. He needs to take it easy for at least 2 to 3 weeks. If the internal wounds tear, he could bleed to death. Here's a bag with instructions we were going to give him when he was discharged. I don't have to, but I'm also giving you his medication. The instructions are in the bag. If you find him at home or see him, please give him these instructions. He must follow them, and call me if you find him. I want to examine his wounds immediately. Here's my card." "I will, doctor." She took his card, staring into space and thinking about what to say to her daughter. "One more thing, Mrs. Brolin. He told me that you and your daughter abandoned him for another man before he was wounded. Axel is in a very bad mental state. After the operation, he cursed me for saving his life. He said that when he thought he was going to die, he was grateful to the 2 men who shot him. He needs to see a psychiatrist as soon as possible." The bag also contained the number for the crisis center and a suicide hotline. "Good luck, Mrs. Brolin." When he turned away from her and left, Julie began to understand the difference between a life partner and a lover. After her previous conversation with Jim, she didn't feel she could rely on him, let alone Axel. He would never abandon her in her hour of need. Carrie jumped up and rushed to her mother as soon as she came out of the small room. "What's going on, Mom? Is he okay? Can we see him?" "He's not here, dear. He was discharged this morning," she lied. "He probably went home. We were just about to go there. By the way, the fact that he's not answering his cell phone has nothing to do with you. It broke during the attack." Carrie breathed a noticeable sigh of relief and relaxed even more when her mother told her that he had been discharged from the hospital. She was already beginning to believe that everything would be all right when Julie pulled up to the house and asked her to wait in the car. "What are you hiding from me, Mom?" "Nothing, dear. I just don't know how they'll take us there. Please stay here. I'll call you as soon as I find out how he is." Carrie was furious, but she stayed in the car while her mother went into the house. Julie was relieved to find that the front door was unlocked. He never left the house without locking the door behind him. "Axel," she called upstairs. "Are you there?" There was no answer. "Damn," she muttered. She peeked around the corner and looked into the kitchen. The coffee pot was half full. She knew it had been empty when they left. Of course, he could have come home right after they left and made coffee. She walked over to the coffee pot and smiled. The coffee wasn't hot, but it was still a little warm, and that gave her hope. Maybe he's asleep upstairs, she thought. Julie almost ran up the stairs, expecting to see him lying on their double bed. But he wasn't there. Only a pair of crumpled sheets indicating that he had at least lain down for a while. She entered the master bathroom. There was a towel hanging on the shower door that hadn't been there before. She touched it with her hand. It was still slightly damp. The only thing she noticed was that his razor charger was missing from the table. She opened the top drawer and saw that the razor was gone too. She returned to the bedroom and checked the wardrobe. Some of his everyday items were missing. She checked the wardrobe again and found that more items were missing, including personal items that had sentimental value to him. She checked the jewelry box and saw that her father's and mother's watches were also missing. They weren't very valuable, but they held fond memories for him. When his parents died, he took the 2 watches and half the money from the sale of the house. The rest went to his illegitimate older brother. Maybe he went to his brothers, she thought. No, they hadn't spoken in years. That would be the last place he would go. Carrie began to worry. She had to find out what was going on. First, she checked the kitchen table. Her letter was still there, unopened. "Mom, where are you? Where's Dad?" "I'm here, dear, in the bedroom." Carrie found her mother sitting on the edge of the bed with her father's jewelry box on her lap. "Where's Dad? He hasn't seen my letter yet." Julie knew from the coffee pot that he was in the kitchen. She couldn't imagine that he hadn't noticed the envelope. "I don't know, dear. He was here, but he must have left. If I know your father, he's gone somewhere to be alone." "Where? Where could he have gone?" "I have no idea, Carrie. Your guess is as good as mine." At that moment, an idea struck her. "Honey, run and get my purse. I need to make a call." Without hesitation, Carrie ran to the car and quickly returned. Julie thanked her daughter as she searched for her cell phone. "I'll call Mr. Gosnell, his boss. He'll know where your father went." When she got through to the factory's main number, she had to listen to the secretary's boastful stories about what a wonderful man Axel was before she was connected. "Roy, this is Julie Brolin. Julie, how's Axel? I've been trying to call him, but I read in the paper that his phone was broken in a fight. And I don't have your number. How is he?" "So you haven't talked to him since it happened?" "No, what happened? Will he be okay?" "I think so," she replied. You see, she told Axel's boss the same lie she had told everyone else, that she and Carrie had left town, that he had been discharged from the hospital that morning, that the doctor said he would be fine. "Roy, he'll probably call you before I do if he does. Please let me know where he is, okay?" That sounded a little strange. Why would Axel call him before his wife? "Julie, is everything okay? We had a little argument before I left. He's probably still mad at me, that's all." He wasn't going to pry any further, but he knew Axel, and he didn't believe that he would let a family argument prevent him from calling his wife and child after everything he had been through. Something was wrong. "I'll call you if he gets in touch, I promise," he replied. After hanging up, Julie told her daughter that Axel hadn't left work either. "Let's go back to the ranch, honey." "The ranch? What if he comes back? We should stay here." "Honey, he doesn't have any clothes or other things. I'm sure he's found a quiet place where he can rest for a while. He probably won't be back for a couple of weeks. We'll check on him from time to time, but there's nothing more we can do right now. The ranch is our home. We belong here." Axel was surprised at how easy it was to get out of the hospital. Using a butter knife he had hidden during dinner, he easily picked the flimsy lock on the closet door. He took his clothes to the bathroom to wash up. Fortunately, he had been wearing dark clothes on the day of the attack, so the bloodstains were not very noticeable. Once dressed, he walked out onto the street with ease. In the dimly lit hallway, he saw only two nurses who smiled at him as he passed. Judging by his clothes, they assumed he was an orderly. After walking about half a mile down the road, he realized how foolish he had been to run away. He was in a lot of pain, and he still had 7 or 8 miles to go before he got home. When he realized there was no way he could make it home, a car drove by, slowed down, and stopped. By that time, Axel was holding his stomach and walking bent over. A young man got out of the car. "Sir, do you need help?" After everything he had been through, Axel wasn't sure if the young man's intentions were noble or sinister, but he was in no condition to be cautious. I need a ride," he muttered through the pain. The young man ran over to him and helped support him as they slowly walked to the car. When they both got in, the young man asked where he wanted to go. Axel gave him the address and they turned onto the driveway. "My name is Danny," said the young man. "Are you going to be okay? The hospital is on the other side of town. I can turn around and take you there." No, I'll be fine. I just need to lie down and rest." When they reached his house, Danny helped him up the stairs. Axel limped over to the table where he kept his emergency money and offered the young man $20, but he refused. "Are you sure you'll be all right?" he asked. "I really think you need to go to the hospital." "No, I'll be fine," he repeated. "But you saved me. Thank you." When Danny reluctantly left, Axel lay down on the bed without taking off his clothes. A few minutes later, he lost consciousness. When he opened his eyes, it was already 8 o'clock and a new day was beginning. His stomach still hurt, but not as badly as before. He took his time, but was determined to take a hot shower, after which he felt like a new man, at least physically. He made some coffee and sat down at the kitchen table to take stock of his life. There was nothing special about it. He hated his job. The only reason he worked there was for the money, and he was paid well. He could provide a good life for his wife and daughter. He glanced at the bar and looked into the living room. Did he want to stay in this house? No. Every corner of every room held too many memories, and staying here would be torture. Everything he had ever loved was now lost. There was absolutely nothing here that could keep him here. He saw an envelope on the table. It was addressed to him, written in his daughter's handwriting. He didn't need to open it. He could already guess what was inside. She was asking for forgiveness. She still loved him. Empty words. If that were true, she wouldn't have left him. What now? He asked himself. He wondered if his car was still parked at the bar. He hailed a taxi and was pleasantly surprised to see that it was still there. On the way home, he stopped at the bank and had to fight his way through a crowd of excited customers and employees who were all saying the same nonsense about what a hero he was. By the time he got home, he had almost $16,000, a full tank of gas, and, as far as he could tell, no past and no future. In his closet hung his work suits, clothes that represented his former life, a life that had betrayed him, a life he no longer wanted. He had always heard that no man is an island, but he was going to prove that wasn't true. He took only his everyday clothes and his parents' wristwatch. He didn't shed a tear, but that all changed when he was about to leave for good. He knew he shouldn't do it, but he couldn't leave without going through the whole house. He stopped at Carrie's door and looked inside. He remembered how many times he had carried her to bed, tucked her in, and read her fairy tales. And then tears filled his eyes. The harder he cried, the stronger the memories pulled at him. He went out into the yard, to the terrace where the three of them had taken turns feeding the chipmunks. He looked at the big oak tree where he had built a swing for Carrie when she was only 5 years old. A few years ago, he had planned to tear it down, but she wouldn't let him. He could hear her voice in his head. "No, Dad, I still swing on it sometimes when I need to think about something important." His tears turned into sobs, and he had to sit down on one of the garden chairs Julie had persuaded him to buy. After he had cried himself out, Axel took a deep breath to calm down and went back into the house. He picked up his suitcase and left the house. Half a block away, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw his wife's car pulling up to their house. He pressed the gas pedal a little harder and drove on. Jim was sitting at the dining table with an empty glass that contained neither melting ice cubes nor half a bottle of whiskey when Carrie and her mother entered the room. "Jim, it's only noon." "That means it's 5 o'clock somewhere," he replied. Julie turned to Carrie. "Are you hungry, dear?" "Not really, Mom. I'm going to lie down for a while." Jim waited until Carrie had left. "Have you seen these videos? Only in one of them was he actually stabbed, but in several he's being put on a stretcher and carried away. You can see his face clearly in some of them," he said, opening his laptop so she could see. The first clip started just as Axel collided with the first attacker's jaw. It looked like the second guy had hit him in the side before he could turn around, but Julie caught a glimpse of the knife as the attacker pulled it out. She gasped and covered her mouth with her hand when the first guy stabbed him in the stomach. "God, I hope Carrie didn't see that. She said she watched the video. I hope it wasn't that one." "Well, if she hasn't seen it yet, she will. A lot of them have gone viral. They're all over the internet." "So you saw it? When will he be discharged from the hospital?" "He was discharged yesterday evening and no one knew about it. The doctor gave me some medication for him. I thought he would be home, but he wasn't there. Some of his things were missing too. I have no idea where he could have gone. Well, maybe if he disappears, people will forget about him." "Jim, this is terrible. What about Carrie? She still loves him. You know that?" "Honey, my job depends on how I look on camera. If this gets out, I could lose not only my job, but my career. I could end up at some local station in Podunk Junction." "Come on, you know that won't happen. For God's sake, you're the second most popular host in Chicago. Have you ever heard the expression fame is fleeting? Believe me, it's true." At that moment, his cell phone rang. He looked at the display. "It's Bob from the TV station. I hope it's good news." He pressed answer. Julie could only hear his side of the conversation. "Hi, Bob. How's it going?" "Yes, I know. Julie just got back from the hospital." "No, she stopped by the house, but he wasn't there. She said some of his things were missing. He probably left for a while." "She doesn't know." "Bob, if his wife doesn't know where he is, how the hell am I supposed to know? And how long has he been gone? Damn it." "Okay, stay in touch. Let me know when things settle down." "Yeah, okay, bye." He looked at Julie, who was puzzled by what was going on. We've heard the rumors. Tim, our reporter who was at the hospital, was finally able to tell us about your husband's daring escape, he told her sarcastically. Okay, and what does that mean for you? Jim replied with a worried expression. It means they want me to take some time off until things calm down, he said. Well, that's not so bad, is it? Maybe we could go somewhere, relax. It would take Carrie's mind off things for a while. The school seems fine with it. I don't think they'd mind if she took a week off. What about Chandler? What will he do while we're gone? He's got good enough grades to take a week off. We're not going on vacation, he replied with a hint of anger. If I get a call from work, I have to be ready to leave immediately. I just think it would be... The answer is no, he replied with even more anger. Besides, Carrie has her first horseback riding lesson on Saturday. She'll enjoy it, and I'm sure it will take her mind off things for a while. Julie didn't like the tone he was using, but there was nothing she could do, so she dropped the subject. As soon as word got out that Axel had escaped from the hospital in the middle of the night, every reporter within 100 miles of Chicago knew this wasn't just a story about a knife wound. Why did he run away like that? Was it staged? Maybe the mafia? Why did he disappear? Was he wanted by the law? Who was he running from? Why couldn't they find his wife? Why wasn't she waiting for him at home? Was she with him? Or was she the one who made they deal with him? A good mystery is like a juicy piece of meat for a reporter. They watched his house, but to no avail. Several investigative reporters began investigating, but they hit a dead end. The first clue was found by a blogger who was playing the long game. He went to the bar where it all started and found the bartender who was there when it happened. Excuse me, I understand you were here when that guy was stabbed last week, he said. Yes, he was here for a couple of hours. I'm ashamed to say I told him to leave. He'd already had 4 beers. According to the rules, I shouldn't have let him out, but he seemed perfectly capable of driving. If I'd let him stay for one more drink, he wouldn't have been stabbed. Yes, but don't forget that he saved that woman, so you may have saved his life. The bartender smiled. Yes, I suppose that's possible. The blogger took a business card out of his wallet and handed it to him. My name is Walter Frey. I'm a journalist. The bartender shook his hand. I'm Jack. You probably heard that the guy disappeared. Yes, although I'm not surprised. Why do you think that? He was drowning his sorrows in alcohol that day. I decided to cheer him up and asked him why he was so depressed. It took me a while to get him to talk, but eventually he told me that his wife and daughter had run away with another man. It was exactly the story he had hoped for, and it explained a lot. How old is his daughter? He didn't say, but from the sound of it, she's probably a teenager. Damn, Jack, that's brutal. Yeah, I could tell right away that his daughter was the apple of his eye. Damn, that must hurt. Did he say who the other man was? No, I don't think he really knew. He mentioned that the man owned a ranch somewhere nearby. A ranch? Like a cowboy ranch with yippee-ki-yay and all that. I have no idea. Probably, but people who have horses around here usually say they have a stable, not a ranch. Ranch is more of a Western term, so maybe this guy is from out west. Quite possible, replied the reporter. Did he say what his relationship with his wife was like before she ran away? No, not really. I thought the guy was completely stunned. He said he came home from work and found his wife and daughter packing their things. When he asked what was going on, his wife said she had fallen in love with another man and that she and their daughter were leaving to go to his ranch, that's all. I'll look into it. Thanks for your help. If you remember anything else, give me a call. My number is on my card. I will, Jack replied. It wasn't much, but he had some idea of the situation. It seemed like Axel just wanted to get away, and Jack couldn't blame him, especially if he was completely overwhelmed, as the bartender had said. As soon as he got back to the office, Walter started looking for ranches in the Chicago area and was surprised to find a website called Chicago's 10 Best Ranches. But when he clicked on each one, they all called themselves either horse farms or stables. Only one called itself a ranch. Well, he thought, this place is as good as any to start. After driving around the area for about 45 minutes, he discovered that the place belonged to an elderly couple and their 30-year-old daughter. He asked a few questions, but quickly realized he was wasting his time. Back to the drawing board, he said to himself as he got into his car and headed home. The whole week at JBC Ranch was gloomy. Jim was worried about his job, Julie was worried about Carrie was worried about her father, and Chandler was furious about the whole situation and regretted that his father had ever met Julie. Carrie felt even worse when her writing instructor showed up on Saturday morning. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail that stuck out from under a black cowboy hat. The cowboy hat protected her from the sun, but it couldn't hide the sparkle in her blue eyes. Her boyish plaid shirt stuck out in front and was tucked into a narrow belt on her tight jeans. She was as cute as a person could be, and certainly cute enough to attract Chandler's attention. He jumped off the porch and walked over to her as soon as she got out of the car. "Hi, can I help you?" "Hi, I'm Cheyenne Bennett. I'm here to give writing lessons." She pulled a piece of paper out of her shirt pocket and unfolded it. "Carrie Brolin, is that you?" "No, I'm Chandler," he said, holding out his hand. "A few years ago, my mom and I took writing lessons from an elderly woman." "Yes, that was my mom. She's not feeling well this morning, so I'm afraid you'll have to stay with me today." "Damn," he said, widening his already broad smile. "I could use a refresher course." She smiled but decided to ignore his comment. "So, where can I find Carrie?" "She's in the house. I'll call her." Carrie was looking out the window, boiling with jealousy. Chandler stood at the foot of the stairs and called her into the room. "Carrie, your writing instructor is here." "I'll be right there," she replied. Chandler hurried back outside. "She'll be out in a couple of minutes. I've saddled her horse and another one. I'll bring them out for you." He quickly went to the stable and led out two beautiful quarter horses by the reins. "This is Carrie's horse, Destiny. And this is her mother." Dad gave them both horses and said they could name them. "But Julie just calls hers horse," he said with a laugh. "Doesn't she want to learn to ride?" asked Cheyenne. 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 At that moment, Carrie appeared outside and approached them. "Here's Carrie," he said. "Carrie, this is Cheyenne. She's going to teach you how to ride." Carrie greeted him without enthusiasm, but Cheyenne chalked it up to nervousness. She checked the saddle and made sure everything was fastened properly, then waited for Carrie to mount the horse. They rode slowly, Cheyenne watching Carrie's posture and repeating several times that she should keep her hips level. Carrie had to admit that after an hour's lesson, she was beginning to feel more confident in the saddle. Of course, Chandler was eagerly awaiting their return. "Well, how did it go?" he asked Cheyenne, not Carrie. "Everything's fine. She's a good student. Soon she'll be riding like Annie Oakley," she replied with a smile. "I thought Annie Oakley was a sharpshooter," Chandler replied with a broad smile. "Yes, but she shot flying saucers while sitting on a horse." Carrie took off the bridle and handed it to Chandler. She looked at Cheyenne and thanked her for the lesson, then returned to the house. Chandler asked her how she was doing. Did she really do it? Yes, she did. Actually, I think she's a little upset about something. Did she ask to take lessons herself, or did you persuade her? No, she asked to take lessons herself. Cheyenne dismounted from her horse. Well, maybe she's just having a bad day. I'll be back next Saturday if you haven't canceled the lessons. I don't think that's possible. Maybe we could get coffee sometime? She looked at him. He was cute, but aren't you in school yet? I'm graduating this year, he replied. Don't you think I'm too old for you? No, not at all. How old are you, 20? 21? So you're 3 years older. Great. You know what they say, age is just a number. Come on, what do you say? He looked more mature than most 18-year-olds. She smiled. When? How about tomorrow? Do you know the corner coffee shop on York Road? She hesitated for just a moment. Okay, 2 o'clock? Date? He said, holding out his hand. She shook his hand. See you later. Cheyenne got back into her car and waved goodbye as she drove away. Damn, Chandler muttered to himself. Carrie watched the whole thing from her bedroom window. She had no idea what they were talking about, but she didn't like that Chandler had asked the pretty teacher how it went instead of her. Obviously, he didn't know about her plans for the two of them. She had to find a way to let him know that they were meant for each other, but she had to do it subtly. She didn't want to scare him away. That night, lying in bed, Carrie thought long and hard about how to let Chandler know that he played an important role in her plans for the future. There was a small pond in the backyard. What could be more romantic than a picnic? Yes, she and Chandler could go to the pond and have a picnic. Perfect, she thought. Dreaming of Chandler and her kissing by the pond, Carrie fell asleep, beaming with excitement. On Sunday, Carrie waited until Chandler was alone. "Oh, guess what I did?" "I give up. What did you do?" "Oh, you're no fun," she said teasingly. "I packed a picnic basket. I thought I could show you what I learned yesterday when we go to the lake and have a picnic." "Sorry, Carrie. I have a date." "A date? With whom?" He was a little puzzled by her seemingly annoyed response. "With Cheyenne," he replied graciously. "Cheyenne? God, Chandler, she's probably only in her early 20s. So what? She seems nice and I want to get to know her better. What's it to you?" She might be young and inexperienced, but she knew this wasn't the time to tell him how she felt. She would wait for the right moment, and for now, she needed to keep her predators at bay, including Cheyenne. "We're going to be living under the same roof, Chandler, and wouldn't it be nice if we got to know each other better?" It sounded nice, but he wasn't about to cancel their date. "We'll have plenty of time to get to know each other, Carrie. Like you said, we live under the same roof. I drive you to school and pick you up every day. We'll be spending a lot of time together, so relax." She tried to think of something to say, but he didn't give her a chance. "I'm going to go get changed. See you later." With that, he simply left her standing there. She was furious, but she knew she had to stay calm. A little later, she heard Chandler tell his father that he was leaving early because he wanted to stop by the flower shop and buy Cheyenne a rosé. She watched him leave from her bedroom window on the second floor, then lay down and cried. Axel stood and stared at the most incredible landscape he had ever seen. As far as the eye could see, giant red rocks stretched up to the clouds. He had no idea where he was. It seemed to be somewhere in the state of Utah. There were signs on the road he was driving on saying that it was a historic site, but he didn't pay much attention to them. In fact, he had been driving for a week and hadn't paid any attention to it. He remembered crossing the Mississippi for the first time in his life and knew he had passed through several states, but which ones and where they were? Who knows? The pain in his stomach was getting weaker every day. Finally, he could get in and out of the car without wrinkling his nose. In a couple more weeks, he would be as good as new, at least physically. The psychological pain, he knew, would never go away. His wife and child were everything to him. All his life, he had dreamed of becoming a watercolor painter to provide financial stability for his family. Ever since he was old enough to hold a paintbrush, he had known what he wanted to do with his life. His high school art teachers immediately recognized his talent and helped him get a scholarship to the Art Institute of Chicago, one of the most prestigious art schools in the country. And then he met Julie and fell head over heels in love. He knew that becoming a successful artist would take years of hard work and study. How would he support his wife and eventually a family? His father worked at a Ford factory and made good money. They weren't rich, but he grew up in a nice house with 2 cars in the garage, and he always had nice clothes and food. But then Axel's plans changed. He asked his father for help and got a job as a welder at the same factory where his father worked. There was a training program, and eventually he started earning enough to ask Julie to marry him. He didn't give up on his dream of becoming a watercolorist, but decided it would take more time. He decided he would work at Ford during the day and paint in the evenings and on weekends. Unfortunately, he didn't factor in the time it would take to plan a wedding. There was always somewhere to go and something to do. With the arrival of Carrie, everything changed for the better. His dreams faded into the background until they disappeared altogether, but he never complained or regretted it. He hadn't picked up a paintbrush in years, but the scene before him inspired him. Leaning back in his car seat, he watched with delight as the sun slowly sank behind the mountains. Although Axel enjoyed the tranquility, he didn't want to drive along this winding road with steep drops after dark, so he continued on, hoping to find a motel soon. By the time he reached the end of the road, it was almost dark. What to do now, he thought. He had 2 options, left or right. To the right was only darkness, but lights were visible on the other side. He drove slowly down the main street as the sign indicated, looking for a motel. "Damn," he muttered. It seemed like he had driven around the entire town. He had seen many small towns in his travels, but this one was special. He turned around and drove back. This time he turned right at the first opportunity and came across the Tory Motel. He prayed there would be a room available because he didn't want to drive on mountain roads at night. He was concerned when he didn't see anyone at the front desk. He rang the bell marked call and was relieved to see a young woman come out of the back room. "Yes, sir? I hope you have a room available for the night." "Yes, sir, we have several. Just for you?" "Just for me," he replied with relief. "We have 2 rooms with double beds for $159, one room with a double bed for $39, and a small room with a single bed for $75. The small room has the best view of the mountains," she added with a smile. "Sounds good. Can I pay cash?" "Of course." "Does the motel have a restaurant?" "No, sir. We serve a continental breakfast in the morning, but we don't have a restaurant." "What would you prefer?" "We have everything from fine dining to family-style eateries." Axel chuckled to himself. As far as he could tell, the town didn't look big enough to have a coffee shop. "Nothing fancy," he replied. "A hamburger, fries, and a good cup of coffee will do just fine." "Slackers, just go back the way you came and turn right on Main Street. You can't miss it." He thanked her when she showed him where his room was. It was just as she had described, small. It was too dark to see the mountains clearly. He took a quick shower and then headed to Main Street for dinner. He had to admit it was one of the best hamburgers he had ever eaten. When he returned to his room, it all started again. The deep depression that consumed his soul. It began every night at about the same time and felt like a heavy blanket that was impossible to escape from. He knew from experience that thoughts of suicide would soon enter his head. They frightened him. He didn't want to die, but at the same time, he knew it would bring him peace. Was it worth living, despite the pain and emptiness, or not? He had asked himself that question 1,000 times since leaving Chicago. Usually, he would just lie down and let the spell consume him until sleep brought relief. But this time, he was determined to get rid of the curse. He saw a cheap ballpoint pen with the motel logo on the table, with a pad of letter paper next to it. He sat down, unfolded the paper horizontally, and imagined the beautiful rolling landscape he had seen earlier. Before he knew it, the pen was in his hand, and he began to make a series of quick strokes. He started with the horizon line and then began composing the scene, strategically placing peaks, valleys, and plateaus to draw the viewer's eye to an interesting spot. Finishing the sketch, he determined the direction of the sun and shaded the shadows accordingly. Then he worked out the overall tonal range, emphasizing the light, medium, and dark shadows. A small smile appeared on his face, perhaps the first in a long time. "Not bad," he thought, holding the ink sketch in his hands. For the first time in 10 years, he regretted not having watercolors. When he went to bed, his desire to paint again was replaced by the feeling of doom he usually felt before falling asleep. The next morning, he ate a couple of sweet rolls and drank some coffee, then headed to the front desk. The nice girl who had greeted him the day before had been replaced by a middle-aged man. "Hello, I'm staying in your small room." "Yes, Mr. Brolin, did you sleep well?" The friendly politeness took him by surprise. "Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask if I could stay another day or two." "Of course, but since you're paying cash, I'll need you to pay for your stay in advance." "No problem," he replied, pulling $100 bill out of his wallet. "Is there an art supply store in town?" "Yes, there's a store called Susie's Craft. They might have art supplies. I know they sell picture frames and things like that." "I'll go take a look, thank you." With his directions, Axel returned to town and went to the store. There were only a few sets of paints for children, but there were charcoal pencils and sketchbooks. When he returned to his room, the maid was just starting to make the bed. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, I thought you had left." "No, I'll stay another day or two, but don't bother. Go on, do what you need to do." She finished making the bed and was about to go to the bathroom when she saw the rough sketch he had made the night before. "Oh, wow, did you draw that?" He smiled at her enthusiasm. "Yes, I was inspired by the local landscape." "It's beautiful. You're very talented. Are you a famous artist?" He smiled. No, I used to think I'd be an artist one day, but it was just a dream." "Oh, sir, don't be modest. We have artists visiting all the time and you're just as good as they are. I can't accept it," she said hesitantly. "Yes, of course, take it." "Thank you," she said again, hesitating. "Could you sign it for me?" He took a pen and signed it. "Thanks again. I'll frame it and hang it on the wall in my room. Maybe someday I can tell people that I have an original—" She paused to look at the inscription. An original by Axel Brolin. Finishing her cleaning, she pulled back the curtains on the double patio doors, revealing a view of the mountain landscape, and left with the sketch. Axel sat down on the bed, facing the open landscape, and began to draw. Charcoal allowed him to be more creative with shadows. Soon he had another sketch ready, which he took off the board and immediately started on the next one. Before he knew it, there was a whole pile of charcoal sketches on the bed. He studied each one, noting what he didn't like about some and what he liked about others. Damn, he sighed aloud. I need paints. In any case, it was almost lunchtime. On his way to Slackers, he looked around. The same guy was still sitting at the table. Hi, it's you again. Mr. Brolin, how can I help you? Do you know where the nearest art supply store is? I really need to buy some watercolors. Even a basic set will do. I'm sorry, but I honestly don't know. Most of the towns around here are small. I know there are a few artists in the area, but I have no idea where they get their supplies. Maybe Amazon has what you need. Amazon? He hadn't even thought of that. I don't know. Maybe? Do they deliver here? Well, not exactly. Their drivers don't like driving on winding roads, especially at night, but they have a depot in Venice, about an hour's drive from here. You can arrange for them to pick you up. That's what most of us do. Did you take the 24th or 12th route? Ah, the 12th. Yes, it can be scary for those who aren't used to driving in the mountains. Venice is a straight 24. It still twists a bit, but not as bad as the 12th. Do you have Wi-Fi here? Sure, we got it about 5 years ago. Finally got it installed because of all the tourists. Okay, I'm going to Slackers for lunch, but when I get back, I'll check Amazon, thanks. Amazon really did have everything he was looking for. He was pleasantly surprised to see that his favorite watercolor paper, which he had bought 10 years ago, was still available. The prices, on the other hand, did not make him very happy. He couldn't believe how expensive everything had become. He wasn't sure how long his desire to paint would last, so he only ordered what he thought would be a good start. 2 days later, returning from Venice, Utah, with the back seat of his car filled with art supplies, he felt like a kid in a candy store. Back in his room, Axel wasted no time. He cut the watercolor paper into 4 pieces, then moistened one of the elastic sheets and attached it to the pad so it would dry. Then he began to lay out his new palette. Earth tones on one side, cool colors on the other. He squeezed a small amount of paint into each cell. When he added water to Scarlet Lake, his favorite red pigment, it reminded him of lying on the sidewalk watching his blood mix with the rainwater running into the sewer. He had to stop for a moment. One thought took him back to the past as if it had happened yesterday. He took a deep breath and looked through the double glass doors at the Red Mountains. Not long ago, it seemed like his life was over and he was ready to meet his maker. But now, as an independent reporter and blogger, Walter Frey did not give up easily. After talking to the bartender, he realized that Axel Brolin's stab wound was just the tip of the iceberg. This was a real human story that could be told, but so far he had hit a brick wall. No one knew where Axel was or where to look for his wife and daughter. Over the past 3 weeks, he had used every investigative technique he knew, including simply driving around the area and talking to anyone who owned horses. Returning from yet another dead end, he noticed a place he hadn't been before. The sign read, Bennett Stable and Riding School. As he approached, he saw a middle-aged woman coming out of the house and heading toward the stable. Excuse me, he called out as he got out of the car. Do you work here? She chuckled. Young man, you have no idea. How can I help you? He introduced himself, gave her his business card, and then told her who he was looking for. Brolin, that name sounds familiar. My daughter gives riding lessons to a girl named Brolin, I think. She's in the stable, if you'd like to ask her. He crossed the hard ground to a small building and knocked. A young woman's voice called out from inside, inviting him in. He introduced himself again and said who he was looking for. Cheyenne looked at his business card with more skepticism than her mother. Why are you looking for them? She asked. If she's the one I think she is, she's the daughter of the guy who was killed a few weeks ago. What guy? The one on the internet, the one who saved a woman from being kidnapped? Oh, I know who you mean. You think the girl I'm teaching to skate is his daughter. Well, I'm not sure until I talk to them. There are a lot of rumors going around, and I'd like to hear their side of the story. Cheyenne thought, I don't know who you are. Anyone can print business cards. I'll give them to Mrs. Brolin. And if she wants to talk to you, She'll call you. That's all I can do. It wasn't what he had hoped for, but he wasn't going to pressure a nice young lady. All right, please tell her it's very important that she call me back. He left feeling disappointed. If Brolin's wife and daughter had left him for another man, there was no way they would call him and admit it. Chandler was waiting at the entrance when Cheyenne pulled up the following Saturday. She was going to ask him about it, but changed her mind at the last minute. She really liked him, but she had done some digging on the internet, and the whole situation with Brolin seemed a little confusing to her. If the rumors about this guy's wife and daughter were true, she wondered what role Chandler played in it. She waited until she and Carrie were far enough away from the house and started asking people questions. So, Carrie, how long are you staying here? Carrie looked at her a little strangely. Visiting? Who said we're visiting? We live here. Oh, sorry. I just thought that since you and your mom have different last names, you were visiting Chandler and his dad. Does your dad live here too? No, my mom divorced him. We moved here about 3 weeks ago. She and Jim are getting married soon. Getting married? Cheyenne wasn't stupid or naive. It was obvious that her student's mother and Jim Freeman were lovers, and most likely had been having an affair behind Mr. Brolin's back. I'm very sorry about your father. Do you see him often? No, he kind of disappeared. My mom says he probably found a secluded place to come to terms with what's going on. We've checked the house a few times, but he hasn't come back yet. He got into a fight recently and his phone is broken, so I can't call him. Damn, that's tough, but I'm sure he loves you. Yes, I love him too. I'd really like to talk to him. Cheyenne understood and was about to change the subject. Did Chandler know his father was having an affair with a married woman? This question made Carrie furious, but she saw an opportunity. Of course, and by the way, here's another thing. Chandler and I are getting married too, so if you have any plans for him, forget about it. You're too old for him anyway. The remark was such a shock that Cheyenne nearly fell out of the saddle. You and Chandler are getting married? This was news to her. Aside from coffee, they had only had dinner together a few days ago, and he hadn't said a word. And that was when she had started to like him. When is it supposed to happen? Well, not anytime soon, sometime after Mom and Jim's wedding. But he's mine, so don't go making things up, okay? Chandler knows he's yours? Of course. Cheyenne interrupted the lesson, and they drove home in silence. Chandler heard them pull up and came out to meet them. You're back early. Is everything okay? Yes, everything's fine, Cheyenne replied curtly as she dismounted her horse. You need to find another instructor for Carrie. I can't do it anymore. Chandler's eyes widened in surprise. What? 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 What happened? Cheyenne was already getting into the car. Ask your fiancé, she shouted back. Wait, Cheyenne, wait. But it was useless. She was already driving away. He turned to Carrie, who was desperately trying not to smile. What the hell happened? Who is this fiancé? Now was the perfect moment. She had to defuse the situation and tell him how she felt so that he wouldn't have to fight off a rival. I don't know where she got the idea that I'm your fiancé, but she asked me about our relationship and I told her how I feel about you. What did you say? Come on, Chandler, you must know. I fell in love with you at first sight. It's fate that my mom and your dad fell in love. I admit I helped a little. What do you mean, helped? Well, I thought that if they liked each other and spent time together, we'd have more time for us, so I gathered information about your father. I kept telling my mom about this guy I liked at school and his cool dad, who was on TV and owned a ranch. When the opportunity arose to introduce them, I took advantage of it. I don't believe it, Chandler said aloud, but not to anyone in particular. Was this all some kind of conspiracy so you could spend time with me? Well, I have to admit that it turned out much better than I expected. I didn't think they would fall in love and get married. I feel sorry for Dad, but Mom says he's a nice guy and will probably marry someone younger and prettier than her. God, that's a nightmare, he said with conviction. Has it ever occurred to you, Carrie, that I might not love you? You will, she replied with a confident smile. Chandler. She was about to continue the argument, but when she touched his hand, he recoiled as if she had pricked him. No, leave me alone, Carrie. Just leave me alone. I don't want to see you or talk to you right now. Take care of the horses. Me? You want me to do all that? You've watched me do it dozens of times. You know what to do. But he didn't let her finish. Leaving her in the yard, he turned and went into the house himself. He wanted to talk to his father, but he was sitting at the kitchen table with Julie. and they were both grinning. "What's going on?" "I just got a call from the station. I'm being called back to work on Monday morning." The news was met with much less enthusiasm than they had expected. "I'm happy for you. I'm going to my room," he said as he left. Jim looked at Julie. "I wonder what's wrong with him." "Go see what's wrong with him," she replied. "Something's not right." His father knocked on Chandler's door and was invited in. The young man was lying on his bed with his arms crossed behind his head. Jim pulled a chair away from the table and sat down. "What's going on, son? You've been acting pretty rude." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. It's just, when you were seeing Julie all the time, didn't you feel guilty about seeing a married woman?" "Oh, is that what this is about? Why now? We've been seeing each other for months. Why does it bother you now?" Cheyenne was furious when they got back from class. She said, "We need to find a new teacher for Carrie. I think it has something to do with you and Julie." "Damn, I hope they don't find out about this." "What about that, Dad? Didn't you feel guilty?" "Maybe a little, at least at first, but Julie is a special woman. I haven't felt that way about anyone since your mother died. And I can make her much happier than her husband ever did." The world is made up of two kinds of people: Chandler, winners and losers. In this case, I was the winner, and Axel was the loser. Sometimes that's just the way it is. Chandler was disappointed. He had hoped his father would find some excuse for his actions, but instead their conversation only made things worse. "Yeah, you're probably right," he replied, turning away from his father. "I'm going to lie down, Dad." The drive home did little to calm Cheen down. Before she even got out of the car, she fumbled for Frey's business card in her purse and dialed the number. "Walter Frey." "Mr. Frey, this is Cheen Bennett." His heart began to beat faster. He prayed she had good news. He wasn't going to be disappointed. "I think the man you're looking for is Jim Freeman." "You mean the news anchor at CCS? That Jim Freeman?" "Yes, I'm pretty sure he was having an affair with that guy's wife. Carrie, his daughter, said she and her mother moved in with him about 3 weeks ago. That's right around the time that guy was stabbed, right?" "Yes, almost the same day." "Did Carrie say if she had been in touch with her father since he disappeared?" "No, she said he got into a fight and his phone was broken, so she couldn't talk to him." "God, how does the daughter feel about it? I mean, has she come to terms with it, or do you think she wants to be with her father?" "Oh, she's not just resigned to it. She's thrilled about Freeman's baby. His name is Chandler. She says she's going to marry him after her mother marries his father." It all sounds like a cheap romance novel. She continued to recount the entire conversation she had had with Carrie. Frey feverishly wrote down everything Cheyenne said and reread it with her to make sure he didn't miss anything. When he got to the keyboard, his mouth was watering. Without proof or answers, everything he wrote would be in the form of questions. But that was enough to get started. Jim Freeman, the 10 o'clock news anchor at CCS, is having an affair with a married woman. And could that woman be the wife of our local hero, Alex Brolin, who was stabbed to death while defending himself from 2 kidnappers? Is Jim Freeman secretly holding Mr. Brolin's wife and daughter on his ranch? If this is true, could it have anything to do with Mr. Brolin being stabbed to death or disappearing from Northwest General Hospital this morning? Stay with us because this reporter is determined to get to the bottom of this. The next morning, Jim Freeman was having breakfast with his new family when the phone rang. "Damn, it's not even 9 yet. Who could be calling at—" He stopped and a worried expression appeared on his face when he saw the number on the display. "It's Bob Borksy, my producer." He couldn't think of a good reason for Bob to be calling on a Sunday morning, and for a moment he considered not answering, but that would only delay things. When he picked up the phone, he was overcome by a sense of foreboding. "Hi, Bob. What did I do to deserve such a beautiful Sunday?" he asked, trying to sound cheerful. "You can, Bob, but you obviously didn't see it. This blogger, Frey Fax, knows the whole story. He knows you're seeing this woman named Brolin, and he knows she lives in your house. He even suggests that you might have something to do with her husband's disappearance. But you didn't do that, did you?" With every word, Freeman's heart sank a little more, but it was the last sentence that sent him into a panic. "Of course not," he replied angrily. But then he remembered who he was talking to and lowered his voice. "Bob, how could you think that? God, we've known each other for years." "Yeah, right. But you better think about how you're going to get out of this, Jim. Maybe you can win people over by saying you're desperate after your wife's death or something like that. I don't know. You seem distant right now." "Bob, you can't do that. I have a contract." "We can, Jim. Read your contract." There's a little clause that gives us the right to do this if you do something harmful to the station. I think this falls under that, don't you? At least give me a chance. It's not me, Jim. It's a decision from above. The station manager called me at 7 this morning. I'll be honest with you, Jim. Things aren't going very well. I'll do what I can, but I'm not going to risk it for you. Okay, Bob, I understand, but if they want to buy out my contract, tell them I won't settle for less than $4 million. Well, let's see how things go. Hopefully, it won't come to that. In the meantime, get busy figuring out how to make it happen. Jim agreed and said goodbye, then looked at Carrie. What did you say to your writing instructor yesterday? He asked in an irritated voice. Carrie looked a little surprised. Nothing. Why? There must have been something. Chandler said she quit after she got back from your lesson yesterday. You must have said something. I was just talking about Chandler and me, that's all. Chandler joined the conversation, turning his attention to Carrie. You said you confessed your love to her. What? Jim and Julie exclaimed in unison, astonished. Carrie looked around at the surprised faces. Yes, she was flirting with him, and I had to explain to her what was going on. The point is, whatever you said, you made the girl follow the trail and she told the blogger everything. I was suspended because of an article on the internet. They even wrote that I was involved in your father's disappearance. If I don't find a way to fix this, I could lose my job. Axel was becoming increasingly adventurous. There were no more landscapes left in his room that he could paint, so he started going out into the desert early in the morning and returning only after sunset. His room was littered with dozens of beautiful watercolor paintings scattered in every corner and on every flat surface he could find. His fame spread. He had already allowed the maid to choose one painting for free and gave the motel manager 3 in exchange for 2 weeks of free accommodation. One painting was considered his best at the time. At first, he thought about selling it, but the more he looked at it, the more he wanted to do something else with it. By then, he was on good terms with the manager, Ben Sandler. He also learned that it was Ben's daughter, Charlene, who had checked him in when he first arrived. After enjoying another continental breakfast and coffee, which he had grown accustomed to, he approached the front desk. Hi, Ben. Axel, how's it going? Good. Do you know anyone in town who makes custom frames? I bought some cheap ones from Susie, but I have one painting I'd like to frame nicely. Yes, Axel. Susie makes frames for some other artists around here. Really? I didn't see any signs or anything. I didn't know she did that. She probably thinks everyone knows. Okay, thanks, Ben. I'll give her a try. When Susie saw the painting he came in with, her eyes nearly popped out of her head. Susie, Ben said you do custom framing. I'd like to have this painting framed with a double matte. And please pack it so it won't get damaged in transit. I want to send it to someone in Illinois. Yes, of course. Axel, right? You've been here several times for supplies. Yes, Axel Brolin. I'm staying at the Torrey Motel. Nice to meet you, Axel. I must say it's very beautiful, she said, handing him the painting. Thank you. I haven't painted in decades, but the scenery here is so breathtaking that I couldn't resist trying to capture some of the colors. Well, you certainly did. Do you have anything else like that? Oh, well, that's probably my best work so far, but I have a few more in my room. Would I be able to come by and take a look sometime? Sure, I usually paint during the day, but just let me know when you want. Then come by and I'll be home. Susie wanted him to see the painting in its frame before she packed it up to send it, so they agreed to meet the next day. Even Axel was impressed by how good the painting looked in its frame. He told her she had done a great job and that he would come back the next day to pick up the painting. When he came back for the painting, he was impressed again. Shipping a framed painting with glass can be a very tricky task, but she had done everything very professionally. Looking at the shop, he would never have thought she was capable of such work. He paid her and walked her to the local post office. That evening, the phone rang in his room. He looked at it, wondering who could be calling. He had only been living there for a few weeks, and it was the first time the phone had rung. He answered cautiously. Hello? Hi, Axel. It's Susie. I wanted to ask if you'd be interested in an offer. He listened to her proposal. He didn't see any harm in it. At worst, he'd be left with a framed picture. After hanging up, he'd looked for a suitable picture and brought it over the next day after breakfast. Susie decided it was perfect. That same day, she framed it, attached a price tag, and hung it in a prominent place where everyone who came into the store could see it. Axel was intrigued and stopped by the store before closing time. My goodness, Susie, $350, isn't that a bit expensive? No, not at all. Don't forget that I'm charging you $45 for the frame plus 30% of the sale. You'll get $200. If the painting doesn't sell, we can always lower the price, but I already have several buyers. 2 days later, she called his room again. Let's try 3 this time. So you've already sold it? Yes, and the guy is still in town. He's staying with relatives for a week. He was disappointed that we only had one painting, so I told him to come back in 3 or 4 days. Okay, I'll bring 3 more tomorrow morning. The next morning, Susie was thrilled with the 3 paintings he chose, and after lunch, she framed them and put them up for sale. 3 days later, she sold another painting to the same man, and he looked at one more before leaving the next day. Over the next few weeks, he sold 2 more paintings and received his first commission. The more he painted, the better he got. The better he got, the better he wanted to be. He remembered reading as a child that if an artist ever reached the point where he no longer strived for perfection, he would find another occupation. That would never be a problem for him. He watched videos on YouTube and ordered books by artists he admired. He was his own harshest critic, carefully studying each painting, looking for areas that needed improvement. Although his days were busy and fulfilling, his evenings were still haunted by thoughts of his wife and daughter. Sometimes he wanted them to be there to share his success. Sometimes he just wondered how they were doing. And sometimes the resentment and despair returned with renewed force. Life at the JBC ranch was not easy. Jim tried to publish stories about his wife's tragic death, but no one wanted to print them. In just a few weeks, he went from being a respected journalist to a persona non grata. Of course, he blamed Carrie for everything, which led to a real falling out between him and Julie. Chandler barely spoke to her, and he and Carrie lost friends at school. Jim really exploded when the police broke into the house and asked him what he knew about Axel Brolin's disappearance. "I don't believe it," Jim shouted. "The police are seriously investigating this case. It's all Carrie's fault." "You don't know that for sure," Julie shouted back. "You said yourself that some of these bloggers are like bulldogs. Why don't we hire a private investigator to find Axel? He has to be somewhere around here." "Oh, yeah, great idea. Bring the press along so he can tell everyone how after 19 years of marriage we just set him up." "Well, at least the police will know you had nothing to do with his disappearance. I'm not going to spend money looking for that jerk." "Hey, Axel isn't a jerk. He was a good husband and father. It's not his fault we fell in love with each other." Jim thought for a minute. "You and Carrie need to find another place to stay for a while." "What?" "Oh, Jim, come on. Just for a while." "Julie, I could lose everything. The ranch, everything." "Didn't you say they'd have to pay you $4 million if they fired you?" "They won't give me the whole amount. I was just trying to play hardball. I'll be lucky if I get $3 million. Do you have any idea how much it costs to maintain this place? The property taxes alone are a fortune. I'll find you an apartment. I think it would be better if you didn't live here until things settle down." By this time, Axel had gotten used to the phone ringing in his room. He thought it was Susie asking him to send her more photos. Hello? Axel. He didn't recognize the voice. "I can't believe I'm talking to you." He was still wondering who was on the other end of the line. He knew it wasn't his wife or daughter. "Axel, the painting is magnificent." That was an important clue. It was the woman he had saved that night. "Hi, Barbara. Did you like it?" "Oh, Axel, I love it. I was so surprised when I got it. You know, your disappearance is a big mystery." "I wasn't trying to disappear. I just didn't want to deal with all these reporters and tell them that my wife and daughter had left me for someone else." "So how are things?" "Not very well. My fiancé and I broke up." "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's for the best. I did a couple of interviews after the article came out, and apparently he didn't like how I talked about you." "Have you been following the story?" "What story?" "Oh, Axel, it's all over the news. I haven't seen Jim Freeman on the news in a while, and I think he got fired." "I remember him. He was a news anchor on CCS. Why did they fire him?" "Oh, you have no idea, do you? Jim Freeman is the guy your wife left you for." "Yes. Yes, when it came out that he had an affair with the wife of the hero who saved me, everyone turned their backs on him. I don't want to sound vindictive, but I hope he got fired. If it's all over the press, it's unlikely that other TV stations will want to hire him. I hope he ends up working in a steel mill." She smiled. "I think that's quite possible." "So you listed this hotel as your return address. Are you living there now?" Well, for the last few weeks. Why? I... I thought I'd visit you. She was afraid to ask because she remembered how he wanted to be alone in the hospital, but she was pleasantly surprised. He remembered the tears in her eyes when she left the hospital. I'll even pay for your ticket. Yes, but it's a bit out of the way. Let me see what the airlines have. The next week, Axel was in high spirits as he accompanied her on the hour-long drive. As soon as she saw him, she literally threw herself into his arms. Normally, such behavior would have taken him aback, but it was nice to hold her. He almost didn't want to let her go. On the way back, the conversation flowed freely. He told her that he had booked a room for her at the same motel where he was staying. For a small town, he told her, there are some very good restaurants here. I've made a reservation for 7 at the fanciest place in town. I've wanted to go there for a long time, but I didn't want to go alone. During the day, Axel pretended to be a tour guide, and after a very pleasant dinner, he walked her back to her room. He wanted to ask her to stay the night, but he didn't want her to think that was why he had bought her the ticket. The next morning at 8 o'clock, someone knocked on his door. Good morning, Axel. I hope I'm not too early. She peeked into his room. My God, Axel, this is just wonderful, she said, walking around the room. Thanks, I go out to the desert almost every day to paint. My presence doesn't bother you? No, of course not. As you can see, I have quite a range. I'd like to go with you sometime and watch you paint. I don't mind, Barb, but there's no bathroom. Why don't you be a gentleman and turn away? Of course. That's enough for me. On the 4th day of her visit, they drove out to the desert. True to his word, Axel turned away every time she, as she put it, needed to kiss. She did the same to him, but he could hear her giggling. Later that evening, she knocked on his door. She had something to tell him and couldn't wait any longer. He invited her in, and they sat down on the bed. Axel, you're going to think I'm crazy, but when I saw you in the hospital, I fell in love with you. He didn't look as surprised as she thought he would. Let me explain. There were other people around that day, and judging by the way I was screaming, it's not like they didn't hear me. One of them even filmed it on her phone, but none of them lifted a finger to help until you left the bar. Were they caught? Yes, the prosecutor wanted to find you, but there was so much video footage that he didn't have to. Anyway, after the operation, you were unconscious for several days and didn't even know I was there, but when I looked at you, I saw an honest man. I know the circumstances that led you to attack those people, but I know you would have done the same thing anyway. Those few days were the best of my life. Axel was forced to admit that after all these years, he was finally doing what he loved and had a woman who loved him for who he was. But, Barb, we've only known each other for a few days. I know. It's crazy, I know. But my mom and dad got married 6 weeks after they met, and they love each other just as much as they did on their wedding day. I'm not suggesting we get married tomorrow or ever. Wyatt Earp and Josephine were together for over 40 years and never got married. I just want to be where you are and spend time with you. If you decide to stay here, I want to stay too. If you decide to move or keep moving, I want to go with you. What about your life in Illinois? You have a job and friends. Are you really ready to give all that up to be with me? Of course, she replied firmly. But the main question is, how do you feel about me? He had asked himself that question several times over the past few days. For some reason, she attracted him. Was it love or infatuation? Barbara smiled broadly. You know we're going to make love tonight, Prouda? I'm ready when you are, he replied. A week later, they found an apartment and moved in together. Another week later, Axel knew he had made the right choice. It was as if he had found his soulmate. He didn't think life could get any better, but he soon found out he was wrong. He finally bought a new cell phone, mainly so Barbara could contact him if necessary. It was one of the few days she wasn't accompanying him to the desert. He was just painting shadows on his new painting when the phone rang. Hello? Axel, it's Susie. You need to come over right away. His first thought was of Barbara. Is it Barbara? Is she hurt? No, she's fine. I just need you to meet someone. Can't it wait? I'm working on a new painting. No, you need to get ready and come here. How far away are you? Oh, about 35 minutes, I think. Okay, hurry up. I'm serious. He was a little annoyed at having to leave his painting unfinished, but Susie hadn't given him any reason to worry yet. When he entered, she took her time introducing him to the other gentleman. Axel, this is Lyle Veskov. He's an agent for several artists. He likes your work and wants to represent you. He had no idea what she was talking about. Represent me? Mr. Veskov joined the conversation. Mr. Brolin, have you ever seen articles about artists in magazines? Seen their work on covers, calendars, or postcards? Have you ever wondered how these artists became so popular? My job is to make you popular. They sat down and discussed the details. Axel motioned to Barbara and asked her to join them. When they finished talking, he looked at her. Well, what do you think? Axel, I'll go along with whatever you decide, but I don't see any downside to this. It seems like all you have to do is keep painting, and we both know you'll never stop. Axel studied the contract and saw no fine print. It was fairly straightforward, and he signed it. Mr. Veskovov wasted no time. Within the first month, Axel appeared on 2 calendars. Jim waited until it became clear that he had been fired. When he was told the amount of the buyout clause in the contract, it was symbolic. No way, he exclaimed. You really think you can get away with this? I worked at the station for 6 years, and this is how you treat me? I thought you'd react like that, Jim. I went to management and told them, but they showed me the ratings. They said that if you don't like it, you can sue, but when they explain how you hurt the station, the court will definitely be on their side. You have 72 hours to sign the contract, or the offer will be considered void. Jim called several lawyers, but none of them gave him any hope. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. He angrily signed his name on the dotted line and then sent out his pre-written resume. He couldn't believe that after such a long career, everything had been destroyed so quickly. He wanted to blame Julie, but he couldn't deny his involvement in the whole scandal. He knew he couldn't leave the ranch. He barely had enough money to make the next 2 mortgage payments. He contacted a real estate agent and said he would set the price for the house himself. When she didn't hear from Julie for a long time, despite his request not to visit him at the ranch, she drove there and saw a for sale sign in the yard. Her heart sank. He couldn't have done that, she told herself. She tried to call him again, but as usual, the call went to voicemail. When Carrie found out that her beloved had left without leaving an address, she burst into tears. When they returned home, they saw that the neighbors, who loved Axel and believed he would return someday, had mowed the lawn. Upon entering the house, they immediately burst into tears, as the familiar surroundings brought back happy memories. Mommy, he's not coming back, is he? I'm afraid not, dear. What are we going to do? Well, I need to find a job. I hope I can earn enough to stay in the house, otherwise, we'll have to rent an apartment. 2 years later, Axel and Barbara were happier than ever and decided to legalize their marriage. Barbara wanted a child, but they didn't want it to be born out of wedlock, so he did everything he could, including getting down on one knee in the first restaurant he took her to on their first date. 11 months later, they became the happy parents of a healthy baby boy. Mr. Westkoff did an excellent job of helping Axel get closer to millionaire status, so he and Barbara bought a beautiful house with a view of the desert. By that time, Jim Freeman had already managed to get 2 jobs. He had grown accustomed to a warm room, sitting at a desk, and reading from a teleprompter. Now he was back where he started, a reporter at a small station in Bismarck, North Dakota, freezing in the cold while reporting on sled races. Carrie popped into the magazine section while shopping with her mother. "Mommy, Mommy," she called, running between 2 rows. She ran up to her mother with a magazine and said, "It's Daddy," showing Julie the article. There were 3 pages of his work and a short article about him, his wife, and his son. Julie couldn't help but smile. Wow, he always wanted to be an artist, and it looks like he finally made it. It also says here that he's married. Have you ever been divorced? Oh yes, a long time ago. I filed for divorce almost immediately. He signed the papers while he was in the hospital. Of course, I didn't know he was there at the time. Looking back, I can say that was the stupidest thing I ever did. Well, at least things turned out better for one of us, Carrie said sadly. The end. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for new videos.